Hey everyone, this is Daisy, and today me and Daisy are going to talk about Mike Winger and an evangelical panel that he was on just a couple days ago. He posted this on Saturday, and he titled the video, interestingly, Our Hostile Culture. Also on the panel were the apologist Natasha Crane and another lady, I forget her name, who I didn't know. Um, and I just have some quick thoughts. So first of all, this was at a church conference, and it was meant to be talking about politics and culture and the church's witness in, I guess, 21st century American society. The whole thing is about 35 minutes. I'm going to offer just like three quick points. The first point was um, the topics that they addressed in this like 37 minutes were gay marriage, abortion, and trans people. That's it. Which again just shows the aw- frankly really odd fixations of conservative evangelicalism. There was no discussion at all, for example, of how to treat minorities, refugees, immigrants. There was no discussion at all about the fact that right now the United States has funded ICE and they're going into various communities masking themselves like a paramilitary force, terrorizing populations, shooting a Presbyterian minister in Chicago in the head with a pepper ball, detaining people based on racial profiling. There's none of that discussed in this video. It's all, I mean, and that's just one segment. The cronyism and corruption of the Trump government that Donald Trump, on the very day that they had this panel, pardoned George Santos, who had been sent to prison for 7 years for ripping people off of literally millions of dollars. And Trump pardoned him because he voted Republican. That's what Trump said. No discussion about that. No discussion about Trump pardoning 1,500 insurrectionists, many of whom, hundreds of whom, had already been convicted of crimes, including sedition of the US government and beating police officers. No discussion of that. No discussion of shutting down US aid, which is going to result in the death, and already as of May of 2025 is resulting in the death of infants. Because the United States government, for years through US aid, had been providing food for refugees around the world. They cut that off in March. Just cut it off, absolutely. And as a result, there are literally millions of children that are now facing starvation. And these people want to talk about being pro-life, and they are completely silent on all of that. And yet they want to talk about abortion, gay marriage, and trans people. It is such an impoverished, absolutely impoverished understanding of God's moral universe and his moral concern. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that throughout this 37-minute panel discussion, there's just an absolute binary between what Christians should believe and what the quote unquote secular culture believes. And the binary is twofold. So, on the one hand, there's an assumption that what Christians should believe on all sorts of moral and political and social issues, including abortion, trans people, and gay marriage, what Christians should believe is just clear and obvious, and that anybody who disagrees with the evangelical panel up there is just obviously in breach of Christian doctrine. That does not encourage critical reflection, introspection, maturation, and growth, and to recognize that Christians, in fact, disagree about innumerable issues. There's also an assumption then that the culture, quote unquote, is alien, secular, and opposed to God and Christianity. And that again, it just encourages indoctrinational thinking is we have the truth. We need to bring it to these people who are blinded and opposed to the truth and goodness of God. The third thing I want to point out in this video is there's no talk about Donald Trump or the Republican Party, but there is this incredible self-deception that everybody on the panel says, oh, well, Christianity is not aligned with any political party. But some political parties may be more aligned in various positions with Christianity than others. That's what they say. But of course, um, the old saying is, don't tell me what you say, show me what you do. And so I don't want to hear you say that Christianity is not aligned with the Republican Party and then demonize, literally demonize Democrats by calling them Democrats or suggesting that no Christian could possibly support a Democratic candidate for office, which is time and again the rhetoric that you get from these far right conservative evangelical apologists and church leaders. So there's this deep self-deception there. The fourth thing I want to say is because there's no critical self-introspection, you find this sort of bald inconsistencies. And I'm just going to play you one clip to illustrate that. Okay, so in this clip, Mike Winger is going to talk about how Jesus spoke truth to the issues of his day, and the church needs to do that as well, just as plain as direct as Jesus did. And then he gives this example, divorce.
Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. And divorce, hot button issue. When he was asked about divorce, there were people listening to him who were going to stop following him because he answered the way that they didn't like. And he went ahead and said, if you do this other than this reason, nah. And so that would have been he did exactly the thing we're not doing.
Okay, so this I just find fascinating. Mike Winger says we need to have the same directness and boldness and being as uncompromising as Jesus. And then he gives an example. Jesus was asked about divorce, and he answered in an uncompromising way that would have even alienated some of the people in his audience. We need to do that as well. That's what Mike Winger is saying here. Really? You really sure about that, Mike? Evangelicals statistically divorce at a higher rate than the general population. That's the first thing to keep in mind. I'll include a link for that below because I know somebody out there is going to say, where's your evidence for that? Second thing is that Jesus says in the passage in Mark 10 and Matthew 19, to which Mike is referring here, if you divorce a spouse for any reason other than porneia, which is marital unfaithfulness, and then you remarry, you are in adultery in the second marriage. So, for example, what would follow from that is a woman who divorced her husband because she was being beaten by him and he was threatening to kill her, but he was never sexually unfaithful to her, did not engage in porneia, of obviously from which we get the word pornography. If he didn't engage in porneia, but he was beating her and threatening to kill her, and she divorced him, and then she remarried another man, that woman is in that second relationship in ongoing adultery because she left her husband for a reason other than porneia and remarried. So, Mike, are you ready to go into the churches and to identify all the divorced and remarried couples who were remarried and divorced originally for a reason other than porneia and then remarried and call them out with the same uncompromising directness that you called out gay couples that would be interested in coming to church? And until you are ready to actually do that, I'm not really interested in hearing anything else you have to say here because it seems to me that any person who is not willing to follow through with what Jesus actually said, you're just playing to your audience by invoking the standard issues, abortion, trans rights, gay marriage, and you don't actually want to talk about anything that might make the people in your pews, uncomfortable. To conclude, this is one of the reasons why I found this to be such a profoundly unsatisfactory view, which will only serve further to perpetuate the irrelevance of the evangelical witness in Western culture.